Blender properties, string, int, float, and bool. So plugin 1 right here, you can see it popped up when I checked it, and you can hit add cone. So this is a review from the previous video. The second plugin we'll build is this string panel. It appears down here, and you have this text box that you can type in, and you can still hit add cone, and it does nothing different. Plugin 3, we add a property group panel where we have int properties, we have float properties, and we have a string. We even have a boolean here, and the add cone still does the same old thing. Plugin 4, we have this 3D text adder that finally does something useful. So if I type the text 1233, add text, in the 3D view, you see that it worked. It actually used the value from the text field to do something. Finally, we have the VSE text adder, which if we go to video editing, we see it pop up here. We can type my slide, start frame. We'll start at 15, we'll end at 45 or 6. Channel 2, I'll slide it over a little bit and I'll make it red. Hit add text and you get that. Hit it again, but I'm gonna pop the channel up, I'm gonna turn off red, hit it again, and you get something else. Slide it over a little more, hit it again, you get another. So it does work. So as you just saw, we're building 5 plugins. The first is just reusing the last one, but making some updates to the naming conventions. Then we're building a string panel, simple as possible. String property, we get a text field on the screen. Then we build this property group panel, which actually lets us have all of the different types together, int, float, string, boolean. Then we build this 3D text adder, which actually does something useful. We can use the field value. Up here, we're just displaying the fields. Then we get to actually use the value of the field to do something useful. And then 5, VSE text adder. This is actually potentially a useful plugin. We put all of the lessons together from the first 4 and make our capstone project for this video. And let's not forget how to test plugins, which I have some tips on that if you're interested at the end. But seriously, why bother with any of this stuff? Well, this is PageKey, so we got to take back tech. I'll keep my spiel brief, but essentially, tech is good, I think. It makes life easier typically. But big companies build tech. This is also good. Thank you for doing that. We have smartphones and everything because of huge companies getting all together and building things for profit. So that's good. But we don't really understand how the tech works under the hood, which means that we depend on big companies, which might be bad. So you can't really function without a smartphone in today's world, arguably. So you kind of give over your life to that big company and hope that they don't pull the rug out from under you. The solution is to learn about tech, the full stack from top to bottom, build things ourselves and become independent again. If we could have our own versions of these things that we build without all the proprietary bloat from big companies, we might be better off. I just want to call back to the good old days. This is a deep track. Remember back in the day, this is you. You're maintaining your own email server. You see it right there. Is your friend. You're in your community. You're maintaining your tech. That's exactly what you're doing. That's what we're aiming for. So for this first plugin, we're going to take the Hello World plugin from the previous video and just update the naming conventions. I stand corrected. These are actually kind of important. So you'll see the first part is the add-on name. So I just called it PageKey for now. And PT is panel type. So you have panel type, operator type. You'll see those throughout. And there are more of these, and I'll leave a link in the article for this. So you can check the blog post to see all of the different types that you can use in the naming convention. Really, PT and OT are probably the ones that you need to know the most. So our Hello World panel should look pretty familiar from previous videos. If you want more info on this, I would go check out the previous videos to know what's going on, but we just updated this to have the proper naming conventions. So if we copy this, it's a great starting point. Go to the scripting tab in Blender, hit new, paste it in there and hit Alt-P to run it. If you go to the object properties panel, you'll see this add cone button. So this is our starting point. Let's see what's next. Now plugin 2, we're actually going to get a text box on the screen. We're going to add a string property, and this is the wrong way to do it, but we'll learn the right way in a second. For now though, it's so much easier just to not worry about custom classes. We can directly append to the scene. We add things to the scene so that it's accessible in our operator. We're going to add this custom text field. All it's going to be is an instance of string property. And then in our panel, we just have to say layout.prop. We say what contains the prop, which is the scene. This is wrong, but we'll fix it. And custom text field is what we're reaching into to get. So you can see that there. So here's this string panel on GitHub. You can see right here, we're reaching into the scene for our custom text field. And that gets added down here where we just set it right on the scene type so that we can access it later. We make a string property. When we unregister, we just delete that from the scene. If we copy this, paste it into Blender, hit Alt-P to run it, you get a string panel and you have your text field, even though it doesn't really do much. Now let's do things the right way with a property group. So if we want to have multiple input types and group them all together so that we don't lose them and they're stuck all over the place, we can group them into a property group. So if you create a class that extends property group, I prefixed it with my add-on name, PageKey, you can add my int an int property, and this is the simplest way that you could do that. Later on, you'll have to go down into the register method and add in the PageKey properties under the scene method, and you add a pointer property that points back to the class name that you created. So it's kind of a weird way to tie things together with this pointer property object, but it's all good. And then in the draw, instead of directly calling prop on the scene, you reach into PageKey properties, and then you get that myInt field. So you can see myInt links back to right here, and of course you can see PageKey properties links back to right here. And now that I've made a mess of the slide, let's look at the real stuff. So if we look at the property group panel on GitHub, it's a little more complicated only because we have this custom class that extends property group. Under it, we can add as many properties as we want. We have ints, we have floats, we have strings, we have booleans. You can add names, default values, max length, other things like that. Check the docs for that. Down here, we just have to add each of them that we want displayed to the UI using that .prop like we did before. And this time we're reaching into context.scene.PageKey properties. Now what the heck is that? That is our instance of the property group, which is defined down here. And it's not a regular instance. We actually create a pointer property and give it the type equals to PageKey myProperties, which is up here, which to me is a little weird, but it's okay. We also have to register that PageKey properties class. And in the unregister, we just unregister it and delete that type from scene, just like we did before for the string. So if we copy this, paste it into the Blender scripting view, hit Alt-P to run it, we get a property group panel with all of these interesting little things. All kinds of UI clicky things, but they don't do much. Let's see how we can fix that. Now, plugin 4, we're going to talk about a 3D text adder. Now we're going to start getting useful here. We can take the values from that form and actually use them. So first we define the property group. This is the same as the previous plugin. We add it to the panel. This is also the same. We bind it to the scene. Again, same pointer property points back. And I forgot to mention before, to unregister, you just del or delete the scene reference that you created. So this is all familiar so far. Now here's where it gets interesting. We create our custom operator, and inside the operator, this is where we can access the value of that field. So if someone has typed something into that text field, it is available in the scene.PageKey text props where we bound it to .title. So now we can look at how that's actually used to add a text object. Things are getting serious. This is exciting. We can actually do something with this. Wow. So we have an operator now. The last video was all about operators if you don't know how. So there's some information here if you want to check it out. But basically you see that we can just reach into the scene.PageKeyTextProps.title to get the value of that title prop. So you get this context in the operator. You go context scene, and then what we set on scene way down here in the register method is available to us. So we still have the pointer property. We still do the register unregister in the same way. We have the .prop to add the PageKeyTextProps.title to it. And of course our PageKeyTextProps just has that one string property. And then the only new thing here is you just grab whatever you want out of the props group that you created, and then you can do things with it. So these 4 lines create a text object and add them to the scene graph. Let's see what that does. If we copy this file, go into Blender, paste it, hit Alt-P to run it, we get a text panel. And I'm going to change this to hello from me. Add text. There it is. Just as we expected. How lovely. Okay, no new lessons in this one. We're just going to apply all the knowledge that we just gained to add something actually kind of useful. We're going to build this guy right here. It looks pretty cool, huh? So you put in the text you want on the slide, you put in the start and the end frame, and the channel you want it on, and the X and Y position. So we have a float, we have an integer, we have an integer, we have an integer, we have a string, we even have a boolean. If you want red text, go ahead and check that box, and then you hit the add text. So let's see how this works. Let's look at the code, and then we'll look at the actual functionality. All right, now we're bringing it all together. We're doing something really useful here. Maybe. Almost useful, right? Still. But basically everything here is the same. We just have different props this time. So we have slide properties that have all kinds of stuff. We have a title, we have a start, we have an end channel, X, Y, and red. And these are all different types of properties, whether they're ints with default values, floats with default values, a boolean that's just defaulting to false by itself, and then some information on our title with a default value, all that stuff. For each of these props, we just have to add them to the UI for them to be displayed. Register, unregister, this stuff is all the same. And then our operator creates a text strip, and that text strip is using our channel, our start, and our end to instantiate it with these keyword arguments. Once we have it, we can set the text to the title from our UI, and we can set the location X and Y to our X and Y from our UI. And if the Boolean value that we have red is set to true, then we're going to set the color to red. Otherwise, we're going to do nothing. It'll default to white. So that's it. Let's copy this, see what it does in Blender. So we paste it in, hit Alt-P to run it, and we actually have to go over, since our panel is set to sequence editor rather than object properties, we have to go over to video editing, and then we'll see it down here in the PageKey category right here. Hit add text, and it works as expected with the red, with the X and the Y changed and all this crazy stuff. It's awesome. There we go. Yep, that's it. So as I created the plugins for this video, I came across just my own little procedure for testing plugins. First, you write the plugin, register, unregister BL info, and test it out inside of Blender with the scripting window. Of course, run the in scripting to make sure it works how you expect. I had issues with unregister working properly in the scripting window because it didn't seem to actually register the class. So that's why I had to save it to a PY file, load the plugin, check the box to turn it on, and try it out. You might hit errors on this step, but if everything worked in the scripting view, actually this one should be fine. Make sure you can uncheck the plugin. This is huge, so I wrote it in all caps, because sometimes you see unregister errors when you're trying to turn the plugin off. So when you uncheck the box, it should disappear and there should be no errors that pop up on the screen. So I recheck the box and make sure it still works, so you can enable and disable as many times as you want, and then you can remove, delete the plugin from Blender if you prefer. Can we automate this with CI/CD? Probably. I'll leave that as an exercise to you, but certainly there must be a way to run Blender headless in a Docker image and use the bpy library to do all of this good stuff automatically on every git commit. So that's it. Thank you for joining me yet again for a PageKey video. We learned how to add string, int, bool, float inputs in Blender so you can get all kinds of inputs from the user. We built 5 separate plugins. We learned about naming conventions and testing plugins, all kinds of good stuff. If you like this, subscribe, because we're all about taking back tech. We're rebuilding things from scratch. We're self-hosting and more. And why Blender? Well, I want to make these videos faster and more efficiently, so I'm concentrating on the video editing process for now. Not the biggest take back tech project ever, but at least we are using open source software to do it. So anyway, if you enjoyed, please subscribe, like, whatever you want to do, and thanks for watching. See you for the next one.